This is a galaxy-wide transmission of the United Federation of Planets. The United Federation of Planets Historical Society, in association with Memory Alpha, presents...
For me, as an actor, we're always looking for great material, looking for a wonderful character to play, a great story to be part of. And if you're like me, who's a student of history, I'm very much into the space program, exploring the universe, the world out there, theoretical probabilities and possibilities. And so I have always loved being part of any project that actually has more foundation in something real.
I knew right when I walked onto the set that it was going to be a good time, that we had the possibility, we had given ourselves the chance to do something that worked.
Not all fan films are produced like this one.
Axanar kind of upped the game all the way through. I was very impressed with what Christian and Alec came up with.
Fan films are, I think, the purest form of love for Star Trek.
All right. Thank you.
Christian and Alec stalked me. It was terrifying. And then they kidnapped me and threatened my life if I didn't do this project.
It's been professionalism from the moment we walk in the door. I mean, we're in a great facility.
Check the hair.
True professionals, the makeup department, the people that are invested and that have spent time in Star Trek. You guys talking to us, our cameras everywhere.
To come to Hollywood and make a fan film, and I don't even say to call it a fan film, I call it an independent production.
I was happy to put on Soval again, happy. And not just Soval, but Soval 80 years in the future, 75 years in the future. I love that.
We had crew that were walking off of Marvel shoots and onto our set.
I thought, wow, what a kick. How many times do you get to do that? You played yourself, and now you can get to play yourself 80 years older.
And there are dozens of fan films, from glorified home movies on up to productions that are really good, that are great, that like Star Trek Phase 2, which has been around for 10 years, which has 12,000 square foot facility with the sets just as they were on the Desilu studio.
When I met Alec, I just thought, well, this guy's going to be a problem. He's just trouble all over the place because he's going to expect me to work hard, and I don't like that.
It started out as something that we didn't need a lot of trust. It started out as something, well, yeah, it'll be me and you will have some laughs. But before you know it, neither of us can really help but do things in the way that we do. I can't help but kind of add production value. And he loves the idea of production value, which I love in him. I love him for loving production value.
And then introduced me to Christian. And they just talk. I'm just in the middle. And there's a talkathon going, and they're all Star Trek all over the place. And I finally said, okay, let me read it. And then I read it, and I said, oh, this is awesome.
Well, at that point, about the only thing we were doing that impressed the Klingons was dying well. There's no difference between this and any other terrifically managed and organized independent production I've ever been a part of. This is much better than almost all of them.
It seems like every person on this set is either a talented pro or an amazing amateur.
These guys love what they're doing, love the characters, love the storyline, and it fuels me.
What I learned on Prelude was frequent and early collaboration with as many of these people as I can get. Because it's great when you give great people a chance to communicate about their aspect of the work early, good stuff happens. When you start that cycle early, the earlier you start those cycles, the better it gets. If you start them late, you can only burn so hot.
People buy into your vision. If you can tell the story right and you're passionate, you believe, and you have a plan, people will buy into your vision.
I'm a huge sci-fi fan, and from the time I was 9 years old, I was reading science fiction books. And then when I was a young actor in New York City, I came home every day to watch Captain Kirk, and Star Trek. Star Trek was my favorite series.
There could be no Federation without Earth. And the fact that the humans could
lead the formation of the Federation just a few years after their war with the Romulan Empire is nothing short of extraordinary.
Every role, and just stepping outside the genre of science fiction, every role requires you to accept as a given the world that you're in, when normal logic argues against it. There are people off camera that you are pretending to not see. There is a situation that is not real, but you are creating it in your mind and working with actors who are creating it in their minds.
Because an actor's life is filled, you go in front of auditions and whatnot and audiences and they're all saying, okay, prove it, let's see what you got. It's almost an animosity, an inimical relationship. John Houseman used to talk about going before the show started, whatever show he was directing, and he would go out and peek through the curtain in a live production, and he'd look out at the audiences and say, F you, F you, F you, F you, F you. And there was so much, there's so much of that in this business, rejection, that to go in front of an audience who loves you before you do anything, which is what the sci-fi audience is about. And they don't love the actor, they love the character. And because of that, it takes all the pressure off what going out on stage. You talk about anything, and it's an incredible blessing for an actor. And although it's not real. There's nothing in our lives that is real. This is what we do.
One step further, if you put on prosthetics and a wig and mouth things and eyes, and you look at yourself in these robes that are so foreign to what you're used to, it's almost easier to create these characters. You know what I'm saying?
I love the adventure, going where no man or woman had gone before, exploring, impossible circumstances and new worlds and cultures, and but it always had that element of humanity, of trying to bring out the best in human beings. Underneath that, everything was always about trying to make things better, right?
I'm literally coming in kind of green, which is great. I'm not coming in with all these preconceived ideas of anything.
It's really, I think, what we human beings are all about. As messed up as we get, as complex as we are, as conflicted as we are, and as off course as we get, ultimately there is a part of us that wants to stand up and do the right thing.
What we're trying to do is make something a little different. I don't want to say better, because that would diminish the other fan films that are out there where people are pouring their heart and soul into it.
We see so many interviews these days. How do you stand out? In order to give weight to these events that never really happened, in order to do the first military documentary in the Star Trek galaxy, three-quarter profile lends a weight to things. Those were the elements that really kind of conspired to make that choice. I told this all to Milton Santiago, our director of photography, and he said, yeah, I love that. Have you seen Facing Ali? And I said, no, but I had loved Ali. My father before he was an actor, was a boxer. He boxed in the U.S. Army and was an amateur fighter. And we watched all the fights in the 70s. Really a wonderful age for that sport. And that there was a documentary about all the men who fought Ali from their perspective. I wanted to see it. And there it was, this beautiful, beautiful three-quarters and profiles on these men. And it lent an amazing weight to these sporting events that they had participated in. It made it really, it just gave it a weight.
But we want to make something that is professional quality, that fans will see and they will love every bit as much as the real thing. There were 40,000 people in Archer Arena.
But I say to you, our greatest challenge is not the might of a Klingon fleet.
I kind of think that execution is often the easy part, because you get great people, and this is a lesson I learned from my father. You get great people and you leave them alone. Let them do what you brought them in to do.
So there's something in the air, and that's why we're going to make magic today, or die trying.
So the key is getting great people. So if I can bring in 6 great people, and my dad also always said A players hire A players and B players hire C players.
It's very impressive. It's very impressive. And this is, I'm not sure what the outcome of this movement will be.
So I go out and get 6 A players. Well, they're going to go out and they're each going to get 6 A players. And so all of a sudden you have this entire team full of A players who all share your vision. And if they don't love Star Trek, they're probably excited about just the atmosphere here.
But I have a feeling it is a movement, and I have a feeling what you're saying about taking back Star Trek is where it's at.
All they needed to do was tell me what they were up to, who was involved, and really and truly by virtue of their intelligence and ability to communicate their picture clearly to me, I really got a sense that I was going to be in good hands and that this is going to be a real production.
I want everyone to come away from this and say, God damn, that was a great set I worked on.
That there would be a conflict with the Klingon people at some point was obvious to most of the members of Starfleet. Yeah, I mean, I liked all that stuff. I liked Star Trek, I liked Lost in Space. I loved anything that took me outside of my dismal 3-channel universe that I had growing up.
Well, as you can see, the Klingons have been played by many different actors in many different ways. We've seen very articulate, very eloquent, almost Shakespearean Klingons. We've seen Neanderthal, animalistic, type Klingons. And people do tend to have a image of Klingons as being these, just wild, crazy warrior men that just, don't care about life and are willing to take on any challenge and war and battle and all that kind of stuff is what life is about. And there may be a certain truth to that energy, but think of a culture that has gone into space and has the technology this culture has.
It wasn't until the formation of the Federation that the High Council began to take Earth seriously.
I don't care what you have to say. This is a very highly sophisticated culture. So yes, there may be that Klingon spirit, and I look at it as like the 300 spirit. It is far more like the 300 to me than looking at the wild hordes, that tried to take over the world times past. I look at it as honestly very intelligent, very smart people who obviously have a warrior code, and that warrior code is something that some people don't understand. I do. Something I've always felt. I don't care whether it was Spartacus, I don't care whether it was the 300, whether it was Last of the Samurai, and Kutsumoto. There is a honor and there's an integrity in that warrior code. And it's not about just going out and conquering. It's a deeper thing. It's wanting for a higher ideal, to challenge yourself, to go to a place that few men or women have ever gone to.
An Andorian acquaintance once said, "Don't push the pink skins to the thin ice."
There have been many, as you said, many playing vocals, but there hasn't been any Gary Graham there. So I try to bring as much of me, my sensibilities, crossed with the requirements of the role. For Matt Sykes, for instance, in Alienation, I didn't grow up in Detroit like he did. I wasn't subjected to the rough upbringing on the streets as he was. So I have to create that from what I know, what I've experienced, people I've met. I take that. It's like an equation. This times that equals this. So my sensibilities, my ideas times this fictitious backstory equals Matt Sykes. Same thing with Soval, and I prepare for every role in a completely different way, because every role is so different. I don't want to repeat myself. I don't want to keep doing the same guy, just in a different costume.
Having just watched Whom Gods Destroy last night, it was kind of like it was kind of prep, right? I live for that one line. Should I know you, sir? And that line tells me everything about that character. And Garth was, there's a lot of lines that happen that you learn about Garth in Whom Gods Destroy. Kirk says he was one of his heroes at the Academy. Kirk says to him that your book is required reading. The Battle of Axanar is required reading at the Academy. He explored more worlds than any other Starfleet captain. We get these little things. And then at the end, there's such nobility in this man who's just been rehabilitated from this insanity that was not his fault, that was thrust upon him because of this injury and this technique for restoring his body that he really never should have had, right? These aliens show, out of the goodness of their heart, show him how to rehabilitate his body, and it drives him crazy. So it's this amazing redemption story, and then at the end, I just see this captain, when he gets out, he starts to come to, and you see it, and he says, Starship? And it moves me.
Regarding fandom and the wide extent that it's out there, I had no clue.
For me, the whole journey, from that original Battlestar, and then going out and doing many, many other shows and other kinds of things, but really frustrated because I love the Battlestar story, and I saw so much potential in it, and yet they were not mining that dramatic possibility, because the industry has always kind of had a very, enigmatic relationship to sci-fi.
I had no idea what I was getting into. I was not a sci-fi fan. Not that I wasn't a sci-fi fan on purpose. I just wasn't, I hadn't really fallen into the sci-fi world, so I didn't know anything about. I've heard of conventions, and I'd heard of fans, and
After we did Alienation and it started airing, people started seeing it, and I would get very, very positive fan mail, and I thought, wow, people are not only watching it but are responding positively to it. And then we were asked to Eric Pierpoint, who plays George, and the executive producer, Kenny Johnson, were asked to appear at these conventions. And I thought, oh, well, that's great. We'll just go in there and say thank you very much to the fans. But then they'd say, here's a microphone. You got 45 minutes. I go, wow, this is great. And I just, be my goofy self and answer questions and posit my notions about doing the show and what the show's about. And it was fun. And then we sat outside and signed autographs, and the promoters thanked us very much, and we went on our merry way. And we did that a couple times.
It's like when someone says someone has baggage, you go, oh, we all have baggage. Well, some people have a lot of baggage, and sci-fi has a lot of fans. So being a part of this show, I just can't tell you how grateful I am to have been a part of it. And to be embraced by the fans, to have been loved to be hated, and then hated to be loved,
Had one guy tell us that he had a very terrible relationship with his father, and this was the one, but they both had this in common. They loved Alienation. They loved watching that show. And whenever it was on, they would talk about it, and it was like the only time in their lives that they really connected. And almost broke me up, to hear that.
As I came up in the 90s, there was a lot of work in the 90s. So some of us may have taken it for granted. Oh, this is what it's like, because I was working literally booking shit every 10 days. It's not with that frequency now, but because I booked so much then, that my life is on sort of, like, I can honestly say to my daughter, to my son, to my friends, I am a working actor, and this is what I do. I am still welcomed and wanted at different conventions, as you mentioned, pop culture, Star Trek, horror, and sci-fi, and still go and still make, money that I didn't, diligently give over to the IRS.
I had not foreseen the possibility of a peace between the Federation and the Klingons, nor had I foreseen the possibility that the Federation might win.
I go to my grave insisting Soval was misunderstood.
I love being the only female captain. I love that she's got a foul mouth and she's a bit of a cowboy, and she plays by her rules, and she's damn good at what she does, and she can still laugh and have a good time and get the job done. She doesn't have to act like a man to get the job done.
The character Ramirez, I saw him as a leader for unification, as somebody that truly represents getting different worlds together and united so that we can coexist in peaceful terms, which I think is the philosophy of the Federation to begin with. And so in a non-Obamist way, but just in a person that stands for the future and certainly has presidential ambitions and just truly wants peace and not colonization. Wants some sort of, we don't want to be in war with each other all the time, turn around, somebody else is invading somebody else. We want it to stop.
I'm basically answering questions, line after line after line, and telling a story, and it's all going to be intercut to tell the bigger story. So in my mind, I have to create the arc of what I'm going through and the story behind what I'm talking about, if that makes any sense.
The approach to the Prelude to Axanar, the approach to the concept. When I read it, I said, oh, wait a minute, we're just talking, but there's these incredible visuals going on behind us, and I'm thinking, that would work.
Goddamn Inverness 5. What a mess. That story about Inverness, I'd already done my homework on it. So the emotional peak was what you saw, the wash. And then we'll let that go and then do it again differently.
I was a dick, but I was a dick with design. That's DWD for you at tweeting this out. Dick with design. When I filmed the Enterprise pilot, first day of filming, I said to myself, wow, I like this setup. I would like to come back. And I would like to be a worthy foil for Archer. I would like to be the guy who just keeps him from his plans, if I can, and just gets in his face in a very Vulcan way. So I had that intent.
My character was introduced. I was not, when the first day of production, it was not intended that my character was a founder. It wasn't until we got through a few days of production that Ira Bear made the decision to say, wait a minute, Worf might have a friend here in Martok, so why don't we, instead of making Galron the founder, because Galron was designated as that character in that one, was going to be the founder on the Way of the Warrior. And they said, no, that's too easy. Why don't we make Martok the founder? And we can put him on some prison planet somewhere, and in reality. So it's what they did. And after that episode, Ira Bear, the executive producer, said backstage, and he said, yeah, we can bring Martok back. We're going to bring him back. And I said, fine. In my mind, yeah, it's Hollywood. And then they did. And at that point, Ira said, and we can give Martok an artificial eye, so you don't have to have. I said, what are you talking about? No, this is much better to keep the pirate aspect of having a slashed. Klingon wouldn't replace a wound with a new eye. So he said, oh, okay. And that's how he got the one eye.
It was bigger, faster, more agile, drip drop. And it was better armed than anything we'd had before. I grew up poor, man. I grew up raised by a single woman, my aunt. So, I don't take anything for granted. And anytime anybody is moved or affected by the work that I've done, I take it as a badge of honor.
The first time I heard drip drop was between takes. The crew's getting the next shot ready. Tony leans in and he says to me, hey man, what you think of this? And he says it on me. And I said, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just like that. And we did it a few times. I said, and as I said to all the actors, do it till you feel it. do it till you feel you got it. And he did it. And then at the end, what do you do? Any director knows, if an actor wants to improv, you let him improv, and then you make sure to get what's in the script too. So I did that, and I said, okay, Tony, this time without the drip drop. And he looked at me, gave me an eye. And then he did the line straight. And then I called cut, and he says, but I still like my drip drop. I think it means that it's like a great ride. It's just it's sleek. It's like the first time you sit behind a Maserati or a Lamborghini or the best vehicle you've ever driven, right? That's relative. I remember my 77 Toyota Celica felt like that to me when I first sat down in it, because it was mine.
Here's an interesting story. I've told some people this, but not a lot. But, the woman that raised me, my aunt, her name was Clara. She had passed away. And for about, 4 months, I was comatose because we were that close. It was because of her that I'm here. She put me in summer programs. She made sure I was a Boy Scout. She gave me different summer activities. She kept me out of gang life, okay? Even though gangs were all around me, somehow I managed to avoid that. So when I became an actor, she was fine with it because she knew that it fed me. And when she passed away of cancer, which for some reason we haven't found a cure for it to this day. I'll never forget when the doctor told me she had worked so hard, and I said, so what we got? He says, maybe 6 weeks. And I had to go out to the car, and I had to hold it. She said, well, how did it go? Were you doing okay? Excuse me. So I couldn't move, right? And one day out of the blue, they sent me the script, the visitor. And I said, oh my God, she's speaking to me. And I was able to channel her through that. And for some reason, that episode has affected so many people. And I think it's because of that parental child connection that all of us have at some point.
Acting is controlled and thought out lying. It's you say things that you don't really believe and feel things that you don't really feel. But the way to do it well is to believe a lie yourself. When I lie to you, I'm not gonna try to convince you that what I'm telling is the truth. I'm actually gonna convince myself. I'm actually going to go over it in such great detail, such intense commitment to that detail that I have convinced myself. So it helps you if you're a little bit crazy, helps if you're a little bit pathological. That's the word.
As if the High Council had listened to me.
They would have had D7s at Cygnus 3.
The D7 would have been ready for battle.
And all our new Ares-class ships would have been cut to pieces.
And we would have defeated the Federation.
If you change a story, the fundamentals of a story where the heart, the soul of the story has been changed, then it's no longer the same story. But if you capture the heart and the soul of that story, and then you change or evolve some of the elements, okay, as long as you do it in a really, really good way, meaning if it's like replacing a character. If you replace a character with somebody you have no relationship to, don't care about, doesn't affect you in any way, well, you just lost me, right? But my God, if you bring an extraordinary actor that brings a whole other dimension to a character and yet gives you that character but brings it to life, maybe even in a more interesting way, who knows? Trouble is we get frozen on what we grew up with or what we liked before, but I'm always looking for, I love, whether it's me, Star Trek, Star Wars, any drama, it doesn't have to even be sci-fi, I look for extraordinary, wonderful performances, wonderful stories. And when you tell me a wonderful story, that's what I'm most interested in.
I literally had a bunch of 5-year-olds come up to me once, and recently in the last year, and they knew their parents had raised them on Next Generation, so they knew exactly what Kern stood for, because he is kind of a rebellious teenager in a way,
I got into acting to live many, many lives. I'm not satisfied. I'm a life hog. I'm not satisfied with one life. I have to live and climb into skins of many, many, many people.
And that's one of the interesting things about playing Admiral Ramirez today, because I'm chosen that he is a total expert on Klingon philosophy and the heart of a Klingon, having played one. So it's going to be interesting to see how Ramirez explains the Klingon philosophy, because he knows it, which is why I have this.
When I first auditioned, I said, first of all, I was already angry. I was sitting in the lot, because I'd blown some other audition for some other show, and I was pissed off, and I was just said, I don't even want to be in this town, and I was sitting in the lot. And Ron Surma, who was the casting director, I was sitting there angry, stewing about something, and he said, John, why don't you take a look at this script, see what you think about auditioning for this role, Martong. I said, what is it? He said, it's a Klingon. I said, oh, great, fine. I couldn't think of Alan Rickman. I'm a Shakespearean actor. You know.
Once Star Trek happened, as an actor, my personal growth sort of solidified. My son was born. I accepted the role of Night of the Living Dead, the remake, which went on to also be a fan favorite. And I just started booking all the hip, TV shows, X-Files, NYPD Blue, all the things that were really, really popular at that time, and working nonstop. And my family is taken care of. My daughter is a grad student at Columbia, which is no easy task.
I said fine. So I went in there and I said, okay, I'll audition for Klingon, but I'm not going to make him. What I think are basically, overstated. I'm going to be quiet, contemplative, cerebral, conniving, not overt in my reactions, but concealed. So I did it.
I love Star Trek and I love you guys, and I hope that this justifies your patience and what you expect to see in continued Star Trek expressionism.
James Conway said, thank you. Do you know what a Klingon is? And I said, let me guess. You want a loud, overbearing, angry, abusive, much larger than life, larger than anything. That's what you want, really. Your basic Klingon. And he said, yeah. So I did that. And as I said, I was already angry. That made me angrier. That they didn't have the vision to understand. So I tossed this chair. It was a chair like that, except it was the old-fashioned kind with it's got sharp points. When the rubber things come off, it's got a point going on in the front. And I tossed the chair. I said, and it stuck into a wall. It wasn't that. It was closer. It was not as close as that. It traveled a distance, and that point stuck right in the lathe. It was an old in the Sternberg building, isn't it? Is that where and it's an old plaster and lathe wall, and it stuck right in there between two pieces of lathe on the inside. And that must have impressed him right off the bat. And then but it ripped off about a half of my thumbnail because it took it with the chair, and but I didn't feel it because I was pumped. I was pumped. Did I just do that?
People love it.
So I was bleeding while I was doing the audition, and it was and I was gesturing and sending little, blood drops on the wall and the ceiling, and I got done, and there was a silence, except for the blood going down to my head, and I said, thank you. And I left. And then I got cast. I think they were a little worried about me.
In acting, and you'll find this out early, all you young aspiring actors, what you find out, you don't just take rejection. You don't just have rejection for breakfast every day. You have humiliation and embarrassment. You're stuck in trade. So get comfortable in that suit of humiliation and embarrassment, because you're going to be experiencing it a lot. So what you do is you get so used to that as your default setting that you just slough it off and you don't give a damn. So another element of successful acting is not giving a damn. And not caring what people think of you as you blather on or stumble your line or run into the furniture, all that. Try not to do that. Try to accurately stand and deliver, with some huevos, some balls. But have a good time, be playful, be fun, and enjoy.
The trick is to control it. You want to be able to sometimes just bring the tears to here. And don't let them fall. Don't let them fall. Bring it down, and then bring it up. Don't let them fall. And it's all technique, and it's really interesting working with your own emotional waves, and then, just sitting on them, because that's a whole other story you're telling about the character who won't shed a tear but feels everything.
I love JG's take on Sam because I could hear this Ken Burns as the Civil War as he was speaking.
I do like coming out with the fact that I'm this cranky old human admiral now, so that it could come out from behind the mask. I've done a lot of stuff with masks.
It had weight to it. It had these events. He had lived them. He had survived them. The consequences of those events were clear to everyone. He was the Shelby Foote of Prelude to Axanar for sure.
One of the reasons I think he has the mentality of a jarhead. I think it's a cross between, George Patton. That's what I'm going for anyway. George Patton and it's like Harry Truman. Very plain speaking, incredibly moral, but understating son of a bitch.
I knew that Alec could do it. I knew he was confident enough to do it because when we first started this, he said to me, if you don't think I can do it, you tell me. Don't let me do it if you don't think I can.
I think we do things that we love doing. If we're smart, we don't just live. We don't just let life happen to us. We take charge of life, and we say, here's a hill I want to climb.
With that kind of confidence, I've felt that I could get anything out of him I needed to, and he's also so responsive to the input. And we talked about Dick Winters. I made him watch Band of Brothers again.
I've done that over and over in my life. I went to law school, graduated, passed the bar, and said, I'm not going to do this. And I then went to USC, and I coached volleyball for 4 years. My goal was to coach on the U.S. national team, and I did. I coached in 2 world championships, and at USC we won an NCAA championship. And I said, okay, enough of that, let's do something else. And I went and started a series of businesses, started a technology company that did very, very well. Star Trek has always been a passion of mine. And this character, Garth of Izar, has always been my favorite character in the original series. And we only see him in 1 episode. And I always wanted to know more. We didn't sign up to be warriors. That's not what Starfleet's about. We proved that we could do what we needed to do to defend the Federation.
I'm amazed by crowdfunding. I'm amazed by the idea of where crowdfunding is going to go. I'm amazed at Alec and Diana Kingsbury and their ability to ride these waves, these enormous waves in this ocean of enthusiasm that they've created by management and contact with this fan base. It's great to be a part of it. It's great to see what's possible, and it hasn't even begun. Crowdfunding, we're in the infancy of crowdfunding. I'm excited about where it's going to go. Not to get too Richard Hatch about all this.
I wish CBS would embrace us the way Lucasfilm embraces Star Wars fan films, where they have a program and they have guidelines and say, here are the guidelines. You want to make a Star Wars fan film? Follow these guidelines. And then they have a film festival at the Star Wars Celebration for I mean, how amazing is that? And we can't get CBS there yet.
What's not to love? It's great. And people say, don't you get tired of it? I go, hell no. What? Okay, people are going to walk up and say, I just love you. I think you're wonderful. Oh, I'm just sick to death of this. This has got to stop. Security.